Again, this is Eric Kroc, Director of Product Marketing at Vistara, and welcome to today's webinar on introducing Vistara 3.0, Hybrid IT Service Management for the Cloud. We're going to go through an introduction to Hybrid IT Service Management and what it is, and then we're also going to do a demonstration of Vistara 3.0 at the end. So here's a brief summary of our agenda. First, we're going to talk about modern IT, what it is, in particular, the development of the hybrid cloud, the development of hybrid IT, and what this creates in terms of management requirements for hybrid services. Then we'll briefly talk about how Vistara 3.0 can address these needs. I'll do a demo. Okay, so first, what's the hybrid cloud? Hybrid cloud is the coordinated use of cloud services across isolation and provider boundaries between internal and external cloud services. This is the definition Gartner has articulated. Basically, it just means that you can be using a private cloud service, typically one that you have built and provisioned inside your own data center, as well as a public cloud service, such as Amazon or Rackspace or IBM Smart Cloud or Verizon Terramark or others. And you are using the two together in coordination. Note that a private cloud, the term private cloud is used in different ways. Sometimes it means a private cloud you're running on your own infrastructure you own and control. Sometimes it also means that you're just using a private dedicated cloud instance on somebody else's infrastructure. So the terminology gets a little bit confusing in terms of how people use it, but the bottom line is it just means that you're using a cloud service you control and a cloud service that's available to multiple users together in coordination. So there are many different ways that companies are applying cloud technology today. Frequently, they start with server virtualization, so they just want to virtualize the servers they have already in order to achieve higher capacity utilization. Then they may distribute their virtualization to achieve higher redundancy and a lower downtime. Beyond that, they then may move to private cloud technology, where you're using the same technologies inside your enterprise on the private cloud that companies are now using on the public cloud, because you want all the same benefits in terms of high capacity utilization, the ability to move workloads around among servers, and the other benefits of cloud technologies. The public cloud, of course, is using a public cloud service like Amazon to externally host some of your workloads and take advantage of public cloud benefits such as seemingly unlimited scalability. And finally, hybrid cloud mixes the two. Okay, so what management solution requirements does the hybrid cloud approach create? So obviously, a management solution that's appropriate for the hybrid cloud will have to be able to manage elements, both those that are hosted on the private cloud and those that are hosted on the public cloud. It's going to need to be able to map your virtual infrastructure to your physical infrastructure. When you're troubleshooting, you'll need to know which virtual machines were running on which hardware devices and which storage they were relying on, so that if you have a failure of the underlying physical infrastructure, you'll be able to determine which virtual infrastructure may be affected by that. You're going to need to be able to map your services to the underlying supporting elements. So we're getting into a highly abstracted world here, where you've got software running on virtual machines that may be on the public cloud on a machine that's hosting multiple virtual machines at the same time. You may even be using technologies like vMotion or vCloud Director to move your virtual machines around real time between the private cloud and the public cloud. You will need to know how the virtual infrastructure corresponds to the physical infrastructure and how the services map to their supporting elements. And you'll need a unified monitoring and management interface. If you're going to be doing some of your workload on the private cloud and some on the public cloud, you need a unified system that can give you unified visibility into the health and status of both systems. One reason that enterprises often use the hybrid cloud approach is they may find that for steady workloads, they can support them at lower cost in their private cloud infrastructure, but they also may be concerned about sudden, unexpected, possible spikes in demand. So they also run some of their infrastructure on the public cloud so that if there's an unexpected spike in demand where they could not provision capacity fast enough on their private cloud to address it, they can nonetheless take advantage of the public cloud to quickly spin up as many virtual machines as they need and address the surge in demand. So if part of your work is being done on the private cloud and part of it is on the public cloud for what appears to the end user as a single service, then you need to be able to have a unified view into both of these things. Okay, finally, this will also require unified alert management across the public and private cloud. You may be getting some alerts coming from your private cloud elements and some from your public cloud elements, and you need a single view into all of the incoming alerts so that when something goes wrong, you can quickly identify where the problem is and isolate it. Okay, now, what is hybrid IT? So hybrid IT, according to Gartner, is the result of combining internal and external services, usually from a combination of internal and public clouds, in support of various business outcomes. Now that enterprises can host their own services and infrastructure on the public cloud, obviously some companies are making a business out of hosting services on the public cloud and offering it to other enterprises, and those enterprises become consumers of services that are provided by others from a public cloud infrastructure. So what this now means is that when an enterprise is planning to develop a new service, it has the option of building all the necessary infrastructure itself on its own private cloud infrastructure, building the infrastructure necessary on a public cloud, doing a combination of the two, or even using some services from external providers who may be on yet another cloud infrastructure. So it's now possible to build new services with a combination of services you built yourself on either the private cloud or public cloud, as well as services provided by others. So this creates the hybrid IT approach, where IT is now not necessarily doing all of the technology construction and integration itself, but instead is often integrated services coming from third-party providers. Okay, so this has important implications for IT's role. So as Chris Howard at Gartner points out, in the hybrid IT model, IT organizations become the broker for a set of services that are hosted partially internally and partially externally. This is the hybrid IT architecture. And so by being the intermediary for these IT services, organizations can offer internal customers the price, capacity, and speed of provisioning of the external cloud while maintaining the security and governance the company requires and reducing IT service costs. That's the vision. So, but this, of course, changes IT's responsibility. So IT, instead of just being responsible for constructing and integrating infrastructure, now becomes the trusted evaluator and approver of services. It has to manage internal services, and it has to govern all services, regardless of where they come from. That includes services that are provided by other service providers. Even if IT isn't actually constructing the underlying infrastructure of those services itself, it still is responsible for governing them and making certain that SLAs are maintained. IT also has some critical responsibilities relating to identity management, where it is the credentials for authenticating users live, and data management, making certain that all enterprise policies and legal requirements are complied with in terms of privacy, security, confidentiality, and so on. There are a few more metrics that enterprises may want to consider when they're evaluating the success or failure of cloud services, as well as their performance. One is agility. Part of the benefit of cloud-based technologies is that enterprises can be much more responsive to changes in demand because they can immediately spin up virtual machines, either internally or externally, on available infrastructure to address sudden shifts in demand patterns. Also, enterprises can achieve greater elasticity. They have a higher upward scalability limit, or one that is in theory, in principle, unlimited on a large public cloud service like Amazon. Now, of course, even Amazon has an absolute number of servers, but if you've got a service that is so popular that you tap out Amazon's total capacity, that's a problem we'd all love to have. So continuity, then, by taking advantage of the ability to achieve greater geographic distribution in your service, you can reduce the increase the maximum time between interruptions. And finally, consistency. You may be able to achieve greater consistency in the quality of service because you won't have such fluctuations in the capacity utilization on the servers. Okay, but that means that hybrid service monitoring will be different than monitoring services that are built internally and hosted on your own infrastructure. So the very definition of service availability now changes. We used to think in terms of element level ability. Was my server available? Was my storage solution available? But now what you really care about is the availability of the entire service. The end user doesn't care whether individual elements were up or down, or whether they're in your physical or virtual infrastructure or on your private cloud or public cloud. All they care is whether the service performs as expected. So now we're going to need the ability to track the availability and the responsiveness of an entire service, not just of individual elements. Then is availability a binary quantity, or is it more fine-grained? You know, how do you measure the availability of a service that is running but with degraded redundancy or performance? How do you account for planned downtime and unplanned downtime? Okay, so that's a background on modern IT and the service management requirements it creates. Now let's take a look at how Vistara 3.0 addresses these needs, as well as just a few of its other new features. Okay, so as we planned Vistara 3.0, we had a number of goals in mind. The first was to make it possible for enterprises to monitor hybrid IT services. Another was to unify alert management and monitoring throughout the hybrid cloud. That means give you a single dashboard in which you could monitor and manage alerts regardless of their source, whether they were coming from your private cloud, from your public cloud provider, or even from your legacy internal infrastructure. We also wanted a way to automate the alert escalation pattern. We wanted to provide management of assets over their life cycle. This includes both physical and virtual assets, and one on the private cloud and the public cloud. This is really important for ensuring that you are compliant with your licensing agreements, ensuring that you've provisioned enough licenses to account for the software you're using on your cloud infrastructure, whether it's private cloud or public cloud. It's also important to make certain that you know where all your infrastructure is and that you don't have infrastructure that is underutilized. We also wanted to enable data-driven planning and optimization by adding reporting on a few key new IT operations metrics. Okay, so let's talk about these goals in turn. First, let's talk about monitoring an IT service that's composed of multiple components. So what Vistara 3.0 gives you is the ability to define a new logical service. So just like in the past using Vistara, you could monitor and manage infrastructure elements like a server or a storage solution or a virtual machine. Now you can actually create a list of services. And for each service, you can define which components it relies on. Those components can be elements like servers or storage solutions or virtual machines. They can also be other services. So you can have a multi-layer service definition. So you can create a service and say that this service relies on these physical servers and these virtual machines and this pair of storage solutions. And you can actually make these inclusion rules dynamic. So you don't have to individually list each server, for example. Instead, you can define a rule that says that I want all servers with this naming pattern, for example, to be included as servers that are considered part of this service. So you can create a definition of your service that is dynamic and will automatically update itself as you add more infrastructure elements supporting the service as demand grows. Then Vistara also gives you the ability to visualize your service. So once you've set up your service definition, it gives you a visualization of the service's dashboard and its topology. So the dashboard view lets you list all your services and the elements. and see a heads-up display showing some custom metrics potentially about service availability and performance. And the topology view allows you to navigate from the service to its elements. Okay, so let's talk about the process of setting up an IT service, a new service. So I'll show you this user interface in a bit, but basically you can group devices using tags. Tags are essentially name patterns, and then you can create rules that define which elements are part of the service. You can group these rules together using AND, for example, AND rules. Okay, so here's a screenshot of setting up a new service. So you give it a name, My Email Service, and a description. That checkbox root visibility determines whether you want this to be visible at the root level in the user interface. And finally, you define the membership rules that specify which elements are included in the service. Here's a screenshot of a custom dashboard for a service. So here, for our service, we specified that the overview dashboard should show the service's availability using the custom availability definition we created, and also the service's current performance using the custom performance definition we created. So again, not only can you construct a service and monitor and manage the availability and performance of all of its constituent elements and see the service's health at a glance, but you can also create a custom dashboard that gives you a customized set of metrics that are appropriate to this particular service. Since different services that source elements and other supporting components like other services from different places may need different definitions of availability and performance. So here's a screenshot of the topology view. You can see that this Vistara service here we've created depends on all of these servers. So this makes it easy for an IT administrator to intuitively navigate, starting from the service that they want to inspect the status of, and immediately drilling down to see all of the elements that make it up. Okay, so now monitoring enterprise applications. Another thing we've done in Vistara 3.0 is we've taken advantage of our existing monitoring capabilities, and we've built in new templates for monitoring major enterprise applications. So you've got built-in support for that right out of the box. So for commonly used applications like Microsoft Active Directory, Microsoft Exchange, SQL Server, IIS, MySQL, and so on, not only can you monitor these applications and their availability and performance, but it's also really easy to get started doing that because you can take advantage of a template we built in for you. So Vistara 3.0 is making it easy to monitor both custom services you've created as well as standard off-the-shelf enterprise applications. So now let's talk about alert escalation. I've mentioned already that Vistara 3.0 gives you unified alert management across the private and public cloud. But of course, that's not enough. We also want the ability to automatically escalate alerts appropriately based on rules. So Vistara 3.0 gives you the ability to define an escalation schedule. You can create a set of shifts, and then for each shift, you can define who's on duty and who alert should be escalated to according to a set of rules. You can define an escalation metrics that creates a chain of users who will be notified as alerts of various severity come in. So here's a screenshot of the alert escalation setup page. So you can see that we've defined an evening shift and a morning shift and a night shift. Shifts can be defined weekly so that every week a given shift occurs from a given date to a given time to a given time on specified days. Or they can also be specified for a specific date range. So if you want to create a special Thanksgiving or winter holiday monitoring and management shift, you can do that. Then in your shift, you can create a list of users who are on duty during that shift. Now, for managing alerts, you can define the level of the alerts and the schedule they are associated with. And then for alerts of that level on that schedule, you can specify how many times the alert should be repeated and the frequency at which they should be repeated and how many shifts they should be repeated over before the alerts terminate. So this allows you to make sure that alerts that are critical get many repeats, if necessary, until they get adequate attention, and that those repeats will even span multiple shifts. You can also control that repeat frequency. Now let's talk about asset management. So enterprises need a single source of truth for knowing what hardware assets they have. They need to know who owns a hardware asset, where it's located. They need to know the status of the warranty and support contracts, and they need to know its operational state. Is the asset currently deployed, or is it down for repair? Where is it? So Vistara 3.0 can act as your single source of truth for knowing the status of your hardware assets and where they are. So it has a model of asset metadata. There are attributes for each asset, such as owner and operational state, and contract metadata, such as your warranty and your support information. It also has data connectors, so you can automatically synchronize this information with multiple sources of asset information. So, for example, if you have some of your asset information in Active Directory, we have a data connector for Active Directory, and you can dynamically link to Active Directory. You can also import files via comma-separated files. So if you just want to take a dump from an external data source as a comma-separated data file and import that, you can do it. And you can also establish a link to a SQL database. This is particularly helpful for companies that are using barcode scanners to handle the onboarding of new hardware, because you can link directly to the database they're putting that information in, and then all that information winds up available in Vistara. Then Vistara has asset reports built in that automatically give you summary reports about this information. So here's a couple of screenshots of the process of setting up an asset in Vistara. So we've got a laptop warranty contract type, a maintenance contract, with a start date and a contract period, and then you can select available devices and apply this warranty policy to it. This is one way of associating your warranties with your devices. So here's a screenshot of setting up a data connector. So here we're setting up a database connector using SQL, and we're going to add some devices. And it's running in, say, MySQL database, and then you can set up a query that will pull the necessary information out of the SQL database or import into Vistara. Then this information automatically winds up in the executive summary report on asset management, and we've made some other reporting enhancements in Vistara as well. In addition to built-in reports that list all of your assets and their warranty status and information about whether the assets are currently in use or down for repair, we've also created new features in our reporting system, such as a report that groups servers by CPU utilization. So you can see servers grouped as those that are less than 60% CPU utilization, those that are 60 to 90, and those that are greater than 90%. So as you see your CPU utilization, your average CPU utilization growing, this gives you a very easy visual way to represent this to management and demonstrate the need to provision additional assets to ensure that your memory and CPU utilization stays in an acceptable range. Okay, so let's shift over to the demo right now. Again, I want to encourage that if any of you have questions, please post those questions in the questions area, and we will be happy to answer them. Oh, we actually have a couple here. Let's take them in turn. Okay, so yeah, okay, here's a good one. Support contract, is this static? Can it plug into the manufacturer, i.e. SmartNet support info? Yeah, excellent question. So there are a number of vendors who have online support systems for their asset and warranty information, and Vistara gives you the ability to take advantage of those. So, if Dell or Cisco or other major hardware providers like that often allow you to provide them a serial number and then get back information about that device. So Vistara gives you the ability to integrate with that. The details are a little beyond what I can get to in this demonstration, but suffice to say, we could do that, and I'd love to follow up with you about that after the session. Okay, can you configure alerts around asset management? For example, email me 30 days prior to expiration. Yeah, Vistara has an ability to configure internal alerts, and you can set up rules that drive when those alerts are created. And this kind of IT automation can be done for any of the assets and elements that we manage throughout the enterprise, and that includes asset and warranty information. So you can define rules for IT automation that based on custom inputs, and then you can trigger the generation of alert when that rule is reached. So yeah, the answer is yes. You could set up an alert to email you 30 days prior to expiration. Around asset management, can I produce a report that shows items expiring in the next X number of months? Yeah, we have an open API on Vistara, so you can create custom reports by leveraging that API. Is there a way to report who's logging into the portal, how long they've been logged in, and when they logged out? Yes, all of the information about user behavior in Vistara is logged and tracked. In fact, it goes far beyond just who's logged in and when they logged out. Vistara is set up with audit and control, access control and audit surveillance features. So you can actually arrange to record every single administrator action while they're logged in. So you not only know who's logged in for how long, but you know every single action they took while they were logged in. Vistara will record the actions they took and store that information, and it can actually play that back later as a video. So actually, this is really one of Vistara's most distinctive features. It's really one of the oh wow features that enterprise users tend to react to most strongly when they first encounter it, because it's so effective for audit compliance. You can really prove to auditors, yes, here is exactly what our administrators do. You can see every step if you want. So it's a really great feature. Okay, great questions. Keep them coming. Now, let's go ahead and shift to the demo so you can see some of these features. Okay, so let's start at the top level dashboard. So this is a demonstration account for a hypothetical company called Luminalto, and this is our top level dashboard. So you can see the inventory of everything you have, your desktops, your servers, your network devices, your storage, your FlexPod, your vSpecs, proven infrastructure solution, vBlocks, your VMware virtual machines, your mobile devices, Cisco UCS devices, and so on. You can also see your measures of availability. And then down here, you actually have your services availability metrics. So this is part of where the service availability metrics come into play. Vistara 3.0 has a widget-based user interface for this dashboard, so you can actually customize your dashboards to meet your own needs. In this case, we've created a custom metric of services availability. We're tracking 14 services, of which 9 are currently up in this demo environment and 5 are down. And you can customize this top-level dashboard to meet your needs. Okay, let's drill down into the infrastructure tab, and let's take a look. So here you can see all of your infrastructure organized by type of infrastructure, your desktop, servers, storage, your converged infrastructure solutions, your virtual machines, mobile devices, and so on. You can also see it grouped by your logical device groups in terms of which business units are using them. You can then also see your devices, manage elements organized by site. And finally, here is the new feature in Vistara 3.0 is the services list. So you now have a list of logical services that are defined, and you can drill down for each service to see the constituent elements that make it up. So this is one of the things that IT administrators really like about Vistara. It gives you multiple ways to navigate your infrastructure. You can, if you know I've got to check out that Cisco UCS, then you can drill down by element type. If you want to check out a piece of equipment that's associated with your engineering group, then you can drill down by group. And if you know there's you want to check the status of the Price Galaxy app, for example, that particular service, you can go into the service. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these things. Okay, so we're now looking at some of the applications that make up this demonstration service. So it's a, we've got a, let's see, yeah, this is an Active Directory server that is supporting this particular service. So you can see that for each managed element, there is a customized, an automatically customized dashboard that is appropriate to that element type. So if you're using an Active Directory server as part of your service, then when you inspect that server, you automatically get an Active Directory focused representation. So you can see the number of users, configuration, its password policy, and so on. And that's true of every element that Vistara manages. So Vistara understands what types of elements you have and then gives you an appropriate set of information on the dashboard for that element. But beyond that, you can actually customize this dashboard because of the widget-based user interface. Okay, so you can go through here and see all of the supporting elements that support this Price Galaxy app application. So down here we have the databases that are supporting it, and so on and so forth. So this is one example of a special service that was created, in this case on a demo instance, to illustrate Vistara's ability to define a large logical service that can integrate elements both from the private cloud and the public cloud, and then can give you a custom view of that service's availability. Okay, now I talked earlier about the ability to navigate the elements using the dependency in the topology map. So here you can see that. Right now we're on the service map. So you have the top level Price Galaxy app service, and now you can see all of the individual elements that it depends on. And in fact, that's organized in a dependency tree. So this makes it really easy for administrators to navigate to see the constituent elements that make up a service if they're just inspecting its status, or especially if something has gone wrong. Okay, now here at the top level list of all services, you can see all of the elements and devices that make up all of the services you have in service at a particular time. Okay, now I talked about how you go about setting up these services. So here actually I'm opening the edit service definition for a particular element. This is the Price Galaxy database group. We've given it the name PGLXDB. And then here is the membership rule that defines what elements are considered to be part of this service. So the rule is tag name is database group, and tag value is Vistara DB group. So basically what we're saying here is if the database group tag is set to the value Vistara DB group, then that element should be considered part of this service. And you can see right down here the help information about the rules you use to set up a inclusion definition. So you can use and or values to group the rules together. You can use parentheses. And there are a number of conventions you can use for convenience. Okay, so you can use this to set up a single service, but what's even more powerful is this is a recursive definition. So right here, we've defined the database group as a service, but that in turn is an underlying service that is part of the overarching Price Galaxy app service. So you can see how powerful this approach is, particularly given that elements that support a service can be drawn from either the private cloud or the public cloud. Okay, so we're not actually going to make any changes to this definition, but as an example, you can create a new rule if you want. So let's go in here and let's see. Let's create a new service. Okay, so this is Eric Test Service. And it's a test database monitoring service. We want it to be visible at the root level. And our membership rules will be tag name equals database group and tag value equals Vistara database group. Okay, so when I click matching members, it immediately shows me which members of the managed elements match that rule. So I can quickly verify that the rule that I defined is actually pulling up the elements that I intended to. And I can then save this, and that'll become a new defined service that then has its own management dashboard and all the rest. So it's really very easy to create a new service, and then this mechanism is really powerful because it spans both the private cloud and the public cloud. Yeah, we do have another question. Can I define multiple tags to a single device? I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I think what we're getting at is, can I use multiple tags as selectors in selecting or avoiding selecting a single device? And the answer to that is yes. So in those rule definitions, you can use parentheses and or. So you can start to use very complex rules that have multiple tests combined via ands and ors on different attributes from your managed elements. So again, I want to thank you for dialing in. Now, we encourage you to get in touch with us if you'd like to learn more information. We're happy to schedule a free demonstration for anyone who would like to see Vistara 3.0 in action and learn more about these features. We're also happy to set up a free trial for enterprises that might be interested in taking advantage of Vistara 3.0 to manage their infrastructure and their services. So you can learn more about Vistara at vistarait.com. This and other webinars and other demos are available on our demos page on the website. And we have an increasing number of data sheets and other resources that are available so you can learn more about Vistara. So again, just to sum it all up, Vistara 3.0 is ideal for the modern IT model because it allows you to manage both your physical infrastructure and your virtual infrastructure, your private cloud and your public cloud, and it allows you to define services that can span the private cloud and the public cloud. So Vistara is the management platform that is best suited for the modern IT world, in which enterprises are flexibly sourcing infrastructure and services from the best possible source. Thanks very much for dialing into our webinar, and keep your eyes posted on our website for announcements of future webinars.